It's all about finding the right depth, you know? This crankbait will run down to 17, 18 feet, sometimes down to 20 on a real long cast, especially with this 7.5 foot rod, and they're feeding upwards. I mean, they're not really, although there are crawdads along the bottom, it just seems like today they're feeding upwards. And whenever that happens, whenever you start seeing them on the graph, you know, 3, 4, 5 feet off the bottom, you know, that's above drop shot range, that's above tube and jig range. You got to either feed them a swim bait, jerk bait, or a crankbait. And right now, with it being so deep, a deep 6 is the way to go. Look at that, you can see them suspended on the graph. Look at 10 feet down, right onto the boat. I mean, they're all over the graph. They're just very, very picky right now. Got to get them to react. 15 to 20 feet, perfect depth zone for the deep 6. This one right here is an IU color, but since we're in perch territory up here, I just got a Sharpie and threw some perch lines on there, just a brown Sharpie. You know, whenever I'm tweaking baits or painting baits, you never want to take the marker and just start marking solid marks on there. You never want to do that. I do what's called stippling, and you basically take the marker point and just hit it with a bunch of little dots until you make a bunch of little lines right here, and it's just a good little effect, good little perch effect on that IU deep 6. There's one. Oh yeah. Look at that. Tell me she didn't want that deep 6. Perch color. Well, IU painted. I love that rod for deep cranking, man. Another nice one. Really cool. Largemouth or smallmouth. I mean, when you start to see them on that graph and they start coming up off the bottom, they get off the bottom, some kind of moving bait that comes from above is the way to catch them. Deep 6 in about 15 to 16 feet of water. Make sure that drop off's in about 20. A lot of fun. Again, with that deep 6, the bill on it is so thin and the body is real buoyant. It wants to float up, but that real thin bill cuts that water real nice. Okay, so, you know, it's 22 feet down below here and it's just a little drop off, but they're in 15 to 17 feet, which is the perfect, in my opinion. Look at that. That is perfect for a deep 6 crankbait. And we've noticed today they're feeding up. You know, when you see them on the graph like that and, you know, you drop a drop shot down or a jig or something like that and they don't bite it, they don't even follow it. You know, we've had a couple where we drop straight down on them vertically and they don't touch it for whatever reason. So it seems like they're feeding up. You know, there's 2 times where they really feed up. That's the fall time and immediate post spawn. You know, that's when the top water and the cranking kicks in. So if I keep my boat in 20 feet of water and burn this crankbait through there, they're aggressive on it and it's a lot of fun. There's one. That's a good one. Ooh, look at that fish. That's a good one. I tell you, that F5 7.5 javelin, it's 7'5". It's graphite, but it's a real soft graphite rod. Love this rod for light Carolina rigs, a big drop shot, and for bombing a crankbait. Oh yeah, that's a big one. That's a good one. Look at the size of that one. Yeah. Look at that chunky one. Ate that deep 6 crankbait. Awesome, awesome fish. Long cast, man. Long casts are the key when throwing the deeper crankbaits like that deep 6. 7'5" rod, 6'3" to 1 reel, 12-pound fluoro. I got that bait down about 18 feet and that big one ate it, man. That was a lot of fun. And we're on the top side of this high spot, and on this bottom side it just kind of tapers down. It's a long sloping point, and they're just wandering around these long sloping points, feeding up, looking upwards. And you see them every now and then come up on the graph and then go right back down. So we're trying to keep the bait, you know, I'm trying to stay in 18 to 20 feet, and I'm trying to keep that bait in about 15 to 16, exactly the same depth range I'm seeing all these fish on the graph. If you think of a long cast and you're winding a crankbait down, it'll go down, and at some point it'll level out and then want to come back up. Well, if you're on the high side of a point or against the bank casting out into the lake, that crankbait's going to dive down, and as it starts to come up towards the boat, you almost want to match the bottom to the trajectory or the swimming angle that that crankbait or that swim bait has. And I'm seeing these fish 5-6 feet above the bottom there. So if you match that that angle with your crankbait or swim bait fishing uphill, your bait stays in the strike zone throughout the whole cast. The other thing too is, for whatever reason, smallmouth like we're fishing for today, not necessarily largemouth sometimes, but smallmouth a lot of the times. If you're fishing a deep diving crankbait like this deep 6, you don't have to touch the bottom. You know, crankbait fishing 101 is, oh, you gotta deflect it off cover, knock it around on the rocks. Not necessarily so with smallmouth. A lot of times they'll chase bait up, push it up higher in the water column. And although that big crankbait, I mean, it doesn't look like much out of the water, but inside the water, I mean, that right there, a long bill like that, it's made to be deflected off the rocks. But for whatever reason, smallmouth sometimes they like it suspended just in the middle of the water column, like we're fishing here over 20 feet of water. Especially when they're feeding up, you'll see them on the graph come up a little bit. But deep diving crankbaits like this one here, you don't have to knock it off the bottom and smash it into the rocks all the time. Oh, there's one. Look at that, hit it twice. See, that one hit over 20 feet of water. Woohoo! Oh, he came off. That fish hitting over 20 feet of water on about my 3rd crank down. So you could tell the fish are suspended. It's fall time. You just need something to get down in that middle depth range.